This is Regained Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 154, The Alkaline Diet.
And we go a little something like this. Hit it.
Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainedwellness.com, and you're listening to the Regained Wellness Podcast. So thanks for coming on out here today, talking about the alkaline diet. And it's probably not as prominent, this way of eating, compared to, say, something like the ketogenic diet or the Mediterranean diet or things like that. But and you might not even be entirely sure what it is. But you've maybe heard of the idea of like acidity in the body and being more in an alkaline state, and what the differences are and why you want to be on one side more than the other. And so I'll cover the whole thing and what that diet looks like and potential benefits. Like I said, it's not super well known as a lot of other sort of more mainstream things, but it's, could be an effective way to eat and maybe something people should be considering, and just that whole idea of acidity and everything like that. So before we get into that, just here's my disclaimer. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, from the Podcast Fairy or Apple Podcast, iTunes, anywhere you'd find them. I should be there. So make sure you subscribe. That way you get the shows sent to you automatically, and you're all set and ready to go. And you can learn about the alkaline diet. And that's what we'll do right now. So in this show, I'm going to kind of just give the rundown of the alkaline diet and what it is, because it can go really deep when we start talking about body chemistry and acidity and different pH levels. Like I'll cover that all, but this could go on for hours and hours. So it's kind of more of an overview of everything. So there's so many diets out there, and again, like I'll always say, the term diet is just, we know what we're talking about, but it is an awful concept, because when you talk about diet, there's the perception of depriving yourself, restriction, elimination, cutting out things which isn't, really conducive to a healthy lifestyle. You want to look at a healthy eating approach. So it's hard because it's just the term diet gets wrapped up in it. But when we're talking about something like, say the Mediterranean diet, which I've covered a lot, it's, you don't want to look at it as like the sort of go-to restriction thing. It's a way of eating which can be very beneficial to the body. So I'd prefer to say the Mediterranean health eating lifestyle, but it just doesn't have the same connotation to it. So diet gets tacked on. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at, again, another healthy eating approach. And it's more about, with things like this, which, I'd be say more in favor of, it's more about inclusion. It's about including as much beneficial nutrition as possible. And with the case of the alkaline diet, that's what it is. So the simple definition is when you're eating alkaline, it's consuming foods that put your body in more of an alkaline state as opposed to an acidic state. So when you're in an acidic state, it's seen to make your body more vulnerable to illness and disease. It's almost like you're taken down a notch, like you're taken down a peg. It's a step backwards, and your body's more open and susceptible to different conditions like health issues and diseases and illnesses. So if you remember back to high school and your acid wash jeans and listening to Crisscross and wearing, I don't know if you wore fanny packs, maybe that was just us here, but when we measure whether something is acidic or alkaline, it's on the pH scale. And if you can remember, when you are on that pH scale, when it's 0 to 7, it's considered acidic. 7 is considered neutral, right in the middle. And 7 to 14 is considered to be alkaline and more of a positive state. So how this diet works, or this approach works, is the people who are behind it and have really promoted it say when you replace acidic foods with alkaline ones, you really can have a big health transformation. And the first step is eliminating those foods that can be seen to put your body more in an acidic state in the body. And of course, not surprisingly, right off the bat, those things that you'd want to avoid like in all cases, are going to be refined grains, processed foods, sugars, alcohol. Also on that list would be, and according to the actual supporters and promoters of the alkaline diet, like right at the top is meat, poultry, and fish. One thing they don't always sort of refer to is the quality of that meat, poultry, and fish. Now, when you have, say, like a grocery store, crappy confinement lot, feedlot based source of protein, like a beef that's coming from animals that are, pumped full of hormones, that are fed things completely unnatural to them. They're not active. They are, stuck in these, like, these confinement lots there. These animals are in themselves very acidic, and they're very sick, and they're eating things that cause the same problems in their body and that same like inflammation and whatnot. And then we're consuming them. Yeah. And I can see how they put that in. This is going to be different than from like, pastured proteins and, grass-fed, grass-finished, true organic, free roaming animals. And so there's a difference there. So I could see how, the meat, poultry, and fish could be, included when they're looking at the issue of becoming acidic in the body. So after that, I mean, that's a whole other side topic, but just a different way to look at it. So also that's needs to be removed to be more in an alkaline state. Wheat, straight up, eggs, dairy is a big one. And a lot of people have a lot of problems with dairy, and it's just, I mentioned this on other shows. I mean, it's the most common food allergy in the world, and it's considered that almost 80% of all people are actually lactose intolerant. Their body just cannot handle it, and you probably know if you're one of those or not. So what's included on it? With the alkaline foods you want to include to be as healthy as possible, you're looking at most fruits, pretty much, all vegetables, all, non-starchy vegetables, specifically like, dark leafy green things, a lot of various colors, purples, reds, stuff like that. Soybeans and tofu are included on it. Nuts and seeds are in the mix. And, you're looking at raw nuts and seeds, not, heavily salted, oiled, roasted type things. Legumes. So, I mean, what you're looking at here are real whole foods that can fit into, mostly say like a vegetarian lifestyle. And it's, they're the type of foods people can normally include and probably are including and probably should include, but it kind of resembles a vegetarian diet. It can also accommodate vegans. I mean, if you cut out, if you're not having any forms of dairy, I mean, it's very easy to do. Ideally, whatever situation you're in, like if you're having like a bit of that, if you're finding good quality proteins and stuff like that, ideally you're just wanting to look for the best stuff you can find, and ideally local and organic, because the more locally grown things are and hopefully organic, the cleaner the nutrition is in them, and the less you're going to be exposed to chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and all that crap that can just put our bodies completely out of whack. So, I mean, a lot of the things are very easy to grow at home for almost nothing that will be very alkaline promoting in the body. So, like tomatoes and bell peppers and garlic, and onions and herbs and spices, all this stuff is so easy to grow. And then it's the cleanest stuff possible. So, like ideally you do want to keep your body in an alkaline state, and this is where there's some little discrepancies in the whole idea of being alkaline compared to acidic. Your blood is always at that state. It's always around about a 7.34 to a 7.45 on the pH scale. So more, remember I said like 7 is a neutral. So it's getting more into that alkaline state. And so, I mean, basically you're in that condition. Your stomach, on the other hand, is highly acidic, but obviously for a reason. So a highly acidic meaning it's around a 2 to a 3.5. So if you remember, 0 to 7 is in the acidic state. So, I mean, it's extremely acidic, but it's because it contains hydrochloric acid, and that's obviously needed for the breakdown, digestion, and processing of food in the body. So, I mean, your body has various levels of acidity and alkalinity in it. And The problem that arises, just trying to show, all aspects of this, the problem arises that your urine pH, which is usually the way they measure it, alkalinity or acidity, your urine pH and blood pH can be different. And a urine pH reading does not indicate the same thing in the blood. So the urine measurement may be high, but that doesn't give you a real good indicator of your body pH and your overall health. So, there's really nothing you can do to change your blood pH, as your body just is naturally going to regulate that itself. Your body is the ultimate regulator. It's incredible how it just can always find the balance. And this is one of the good indicators. People use those little urine test strip things. So, they can get an idea of the measurement from their urine and the urine pH, but it's not giving an indicator for the whole body. So it can be a little misleading, but your body will just get itself into that proper condition. If it's too far one way or the other, it's dead. It's the same thing with blood sugar. If you're non-diabetic or anything like that, if you, at any given time, you have a teaspoon of glucose or whatever that's always floating through the body, if that's up to a tablespoon, you're dead. Your body, and the same thing with the pH with the blood, your body will always regulate it. So it's more about eliminating those other foods that are going to cause more health problems on top of it, and then including those things that are, less acidic as well, those foods I mentioned, but also, at the same time, come with those health benefits. They're full of micronutrients and vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and polyphenols and all that sort of stuff. So, one of the other issues is the possibility of being deficient in other nutrients when you cut out quite a wide variety of foods, and that can sometimes happen with the alkaline diet. But say you're completely cutting out, poultry or whatever, you might have a little trouble, or beef, you might have a little trouble getting adequate protein in the day. Not to say you can't, but it might be a little tougher, or you might be a little lower in iron and things. You can make up and get in other sources, but you have to be a little more wary. So that's one of the other issues of the alkaline diet, is that it is removing a decent variety of foods. So you want to make sure you're covered in that. So, regardless, even if you're a full carnivore and you just eat bacon all day and whatever, which I probably wouldn't recommend, but no matter your view on protein and animal protein, regardless, your diet should still be plant-based. The anchor of your diet cannot be, just animal protein, regardless of how you view this. Your diet needs to be plant-based. That needs to be the core of everything. You're looking for double-digit servings of non-starchy vegetables each day, primarily dark leafy greens. If you're looking at your dinner plate, the majority of things on there should be plant-based. So say you've got all these greens, and then maybe you've got a little bit of sweet potato, and then you're using some olive oil for a bit of a dressing, and then you've got some nuts and seeds as a snack, and then even say a bit of dark chocolate after for dessert. These are all plant-based foods, and that's what everything, that's what your daily intake should look like. So the foods listed as alkaline are good for you, and they should be included daily. And if you do, if you do consume animal proteins, you're again looking for the cleanest sources possible. I want to touch on something here, that is the idea that when people are consuming too many acid-forming foods, or if their body is potentially more acidic, that it does not cause osteoporosis. And this is stuff I've been looking up, researching. That's always been a connection, that if you're acidic, it's going to relate to this poor bone health. But osteoporosis is a progressive bone disease, and it's characterized by a decrease in bone mineral content. And we know osteoporosis most common in postmenopausal women. Obviously increases risk of fractures, but many alkaline diet enthusiasts believe that in order to maintain that constant blood pH, the body takes alkaline minerals, and one of the easiest and most abundant to get is calcium. And the idea, it's thought that your body takes the calcium from your bones to buffer all the acids that are from the acid forming foods you eat. So it's looking for something that it can get to like kind of neutralize everything, and it turns to the bone and take it away. So according to this theory, acid forming diets such as, all the stuff we tend to eat in a Western diet, processed refined foods, can cause a loss in bone mineral density. And it's been around for a while. It's been called, what do they call it? The acid ash hypothesis of osteoporosis. Sounds like a good band name. But here's the problem with this theory, is that the function of the kidneys is completely ignored. And our kidneys are so crucial to removing acids, and they're big in regulating that body pH. I talked about how it's always in between like that 7.25, 7, like however it naturally falls. The kidneys are so important in this whole process, and it's really one of their main roles. So the kidneys produce bicarbonate ions, and that neutralizes the acids in the blood. And it's one of those sustainable processes which enables the body to tightly regulate the blood pH. Like the amazing, like it's your body's like on a hair sometimes with how it's so close to being like done and then in perfect health. And there's such a fine line, and it's amazing how able your body is to just so tightly regulate it. It's not like it goes extremes one way or the other. It's like on this fine line. And like that's when we're looking at the kidneys, that's their main thing. So also involved is our respiratory system, and that's involved in controlling your blood pH, not just, kidneys and everything. So when those bicarbonate ions form in the kidneys, they bind to the acids in the blood, and then that forms carbon dioxide. We breathe that out, or when you urinate it out or whatever. But interesting how a lot of what's lost in the body is through the breath. And I mentioned this before, like when we talk about body fat loss, which is different than weight loss can be a whole other issue. Like when we talk about weight loss, a lot of the times it's a big combination of things. Like if someone loses weight really quick, which isn't the hardest thing to do, but it's going to be the wrong type of weight. We're looking at body fat loss ideally. So with weight loss, it's generally a lot of water weight. And on top of that, there might be some body fat loss and even sometimes some muscle loss too, but we lose a lot of that weight through the water. When we're talking body fat loss, how that's eliminated through the body is primarily actually through the breath. And that idea, like the carbon dioxides and the carbons from the fat that are created and then exhaled. You do lose some through, sweat and urine and stuff like that, but it's like 70%, I believe, of the fat you lose is through that breath. So it's really amazing. It's just one of those things no one really seems to consider, when you talk about fat melting off, it's more exhaled out. So, sorry, that's just a side rant there. But that's one of the things that we get rid of that acid through the breath. So our bones are actually not involved in the process at all. So if that's just one of those things that you've seen as a potential issue. Another problem with that whole hypothesis, the acid ash bone thing, is that it ignores one of the main drivers of osteoporosis, which is actually a loss in the protein collagen from the bones. So it's weird because that collagen is linked with low levels of, what do they call this here? Orthosilicic acid and ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C. So there's research, and I'm looking at, this is healthline.com with a lot of the research, and there's 0 observational studies that found a relationship between dietary acid and bone density or fracture risk. So basically there's not even a relationship between urine pH and bone health, which is just interesting because it's always been a widely thought thing. So, I mean, contrary to popular belief, high protein diets, which they've seen as acid forming, are actually linked with healthier bones because there's more minerals and things available for the bones. So this is just a side thing, and it's not concrete research by any means, but it does suggest that some of these acid forming foods might not actually be an issue when it comes to bone health, which is always thought to be. And again, there's looking at different clinical trials. There's many large reviews that concluded that acid forming diets don't have any impact on calcium levels in the body, which is hopefully encouraging, or for people who have, that's been a main concern too. So, I mean, if anything, there's the potential that they can, in the case of like the animal proteins and stuff from good quality things, that they can actually improve bone health by being able to increase calcium retention in the body. And interestingly, I didn't know this, that it can activate IGF-1, so it's insulin-like growth factor. And that's a hormone. And I never was aware of this, how it stimulates. Everyone's, sort of familiar with insulin-like growth factors involved with like muscle growth and repair. And a lot of bodybuilders and a lot of even pro athletes who have been busted for drugs, IGF-1 had always been one of the biggest ones for as far as developing muscle size and power. But not only, so your body naturally produces this. So not only does it stimulate repair of muscle, it actually stimulates repair of the bone, which is something I did not fully know of till I was looking deeper into this. So that's just, talking a little more about that whole bone issue. Here's another little side thing, and it actually looks back to ancestral diets and the idea of, acidic foods and acidic meats. And if you look at pre-agriculture humans, they were eating alkaline-based diet, and around 87% they figured were consuming this. And this was kind of one of the basis for many arguments behind the alkaline diet, like that these, you can still find these like modern societies and civilizations today that are eating the diet similar to their ancestors and prehistoric ancestors, and that they're found to be in amazing health, and that they have, just stronger bones and lean muscle and healthier immune systems and better gut microbiomes and all that sort of thing. But a lot of these tribes and societies relied heavily on animal foods. And most recent research estimated that half of pre-agriculture humans ate what they consider net alkaline forming diets, while the other half ate net acid forming diets. So a lot had a lot of meats, had a lot of, say, tubers or starches or whatever. But this seems more realistic considering that it makes sense that they weren't in these crazy acidic states, even though they ate what we'd maybe consider high acid foods. But they're living in completely different environments and climates, and obviously the access to the food they have. I mean, if you look at our food even from 100 years ago, it's they'd be considered super, even like processed foods for the time and breads and whatever, they'd be considered superfoods today compared to, let alone thousands and thousands of years ago. So I don't know if it's necessarily a good comparison that even if they were eating what we'd consider acid forming diets, I mean, they just had the cleanest foods possible, and they're living in pristine environments and no pollution and no stress and chemicals and all that sort of stuff. So it's pushing towards more, again, the cleanest sources possible of these foods. And this is where I'll wrap it up here. And the takeaway from this whole thing about should you follow the alkaline diet and whatever, and we're looking at the different, say, those ancient societies or whatever, it's the main thing that the alkaline diet is based around is not, to me, it's not just what it includes, it's basically what it doesn't include. And there aren't processed foods, there aren't junk snack foods, there's no fast food, there isn't refined carbohydrates, there isn't high fructose corn syrup or artificial flavors or sweeteners or trans fats or alcohol. It's focused on real whole foods that are nutrient dense and natural. And that's the whole idea, like why the term diet is so bad. We're looking at a healthy way of eating. So as far as diets go, it's good. The alkaline diet is good, but it's a way we should be eating anyway. And it's including the things that we know that we're supposed to have. So it's very good because of what it promotes. And when you start eliminating those things, like all that refined crap, that's when you start seeing improvements in your health. You make it easier by including those high alkaline foods and the fruits and vegetables and stuff. Like if you haven't been eating those before, of course you're going to get healthier. So it's a kind of double whammy effect. When you make it a point to include things off that list of the alkaline foods each day, you make it easier for your body to run optimally and for you to feel your best and to combat sickness and diseases and illness and everything like that. And then it kind of all comes together when you combine that with some good exercise, with some, strength training if you can fit it in, with some cardio, with good sleep, with reducing stress or managing stress as best as possible through those things like stress. And, even if you find meditation helpful or like deep breathing exercises, that's when real health and wellness all comes together. So it's with this episode, it's, kind of breaking down what this whole diet is and showing how the approach of eating this way is very beneficial. So it's not that you're following the alkaline diet per se, it's that you're making these changes where you're eliminating a lot of crap and promoting more of these healthier foods at the same time. So that's it. Hopefully that gives you some info into the whole thing, and just related to like the pH and the balance in the body and the osteoporosis bone issue. Hopefully just a little more insight in this whole thing. So I'll wrap it up here. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show. Again, if you like it, subscribe. If you really like it, give it a rating and review on iTunes, and that just gets it exposed more and works their magic algorithms to promote things. And who the hell knows how things are working online now. It's hard to trust a lot of it, but in this case, it looks like that's a good way to let it be known. And I'll probably never, ever share any things on Facebook again as far as posts and whatever. I haven't used Facebook in so long. Depending when you're listening to this, at the moment, that's Facebook's not the most popular thing in the world when it comes to privacy and sharing things. But with iTunes and podcasts and stuff like that, it's still relatively straightforward. So yeah, subscribe, check it out as often as you can. Check out all the old shows. If you really like them, share them with other people that you think might benefit from this information. And we'll see you soon. Bye.